Phillips. Welcome to Dateline NBC. Tonight on Dateline.
Survival in the wild, a story that captured the hearts of the nation. A young family takes the wrong road in a blizzard.
It was just a matter of time before we just got in too deep and couldn't turn back.
They walked until she could go no further, so he put his wife and their baby in this cave and got ready to set out alone.
I think that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Because I didn't know, if I was ever going to see him again.
I think we said I love you like 1,000 times.
Tonight, I'll have two reports. First, stranded and snowbound.
Then, even as they're recovering, film producers come to make a pitch.
And it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that it's a pretty incredible story.
The TV rights go for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
He kind of looks like, I think, Christian Slater.
And some people told me, Kevin Bacon.
Two people who simply refuse to quit. After the trauma comes the healing.
Snowbound for 8 days with their 5-month-old baby. He walked 50 miles. She sheltered the baby in a cave. Their story when we come back. Five skiers who had been all but given up for dead found alive. It's been a winter many people will never forget. Years from now, when people talk about the winter of '93, they're likely to recall Jennifer and James Stolpa, both 21. They survived 8 days, lost and stranded in Nevada's high desert. Unlike Rob Dubin and his companions, they were not experienced mountaineers. They did not have survival gear. What they did have was a 5-month-old baby. We visited them in their hospital room and went back into the wilderness to retrace their steps. It's hard to believe that there's still a spot in America so remote and forbidding that as far as the eye can see, there's not a town, not even a house. But here it is. Jim and Jennifer Stolpa found that out the hard way. Their story began on Tuesday, December 29th, an inauspicious day to start a road trip.
Winter storm warning in effect for the Sierra Nevada from Yosemite northward through the day and tonight. By tomorrow morning, 2 to 3 feet of new snow expected already.
They knew bad weather was forecast, but were determined to get to Jim's grandmother's funeral in Idaho. They packed 5-month-old Clayton in a borrowed pickup truck and hit the road.
We just thought that it would probably be like, all day, all night drive. We were just bent and determined to drive straight through.
Jim and Jennifer were to have followed Interstate 80 from the San Francisco Bay Area, east across California, and then through the mountains into Nevada, then north into Idaho. But they ran smack into the storm.
The Sierra under siege tonight. Mother Nature packs a punch filled with snow. It's paralyzed most of the area, but there are...
The blizzard closed Interstate 80. Though Jim remembered his mother's advice, she'd said, don't leave the interstate. If it closes, wait it out. They didn't wait. Instead, they mapped another course on smaller roads. What was the weather like as you made a turn off a highway onto a long shot road?
It was fine for a long time until, shoot, I don't know what town, but we were driving through the mountains and then all of a sudden it just started snowing really bad.
As night approached, Jim followed this 2-lane road that took them into Nevada. But in the darkness and blowing snow, in unfamiliar country, neither Jim nor Jennifer saw the road sign that would have told them to turn back.
We couldn't really see the road, We could see what looked like a road because we could see bushes on one side and bushes on another side. And then, a big white clearing in the middle. But it was just fresh snow, never been driven through yet.
It was just a matter of time before we just got in too deep and couldn't turn back.
That was the point of no return.
Yeah.
It was now almost midnight Tuesday. They'd been on the road 18 hours and decided to spend the night huddled in the truck. They planned to dig out and move on in the morning. But morning brought bad news. The pickup was mired in deep snow and wouldn't budge. And they were lost, but they didn't know how lost. 50 miles from the nearest town, more than 20 miles from the nearest house.
How are you holding up on the second day?
I was scared. And I kept seeing clouds coming in, and I was going, oh, my God, more snow. You know, that's all I could think about. I was like, oh, God, another storm. You know, we're never going to get out of here if it snows more.
It snowed all night and all day Wednesday, and the wind howled. It was so cold, ice formed on the inside of the truck's windows. The Stolpas and the baby, Clayton, spent Wednesday in the truck listening to the radio. And Thursday, New Year's Eve. And Friday, apprehension building by the hour. 3 days without a sign of another human being.
What did you have to eat? Yucky fruit cake and
Fruit cake and some
macaroni.
coconut cookies and
Half a bag of
not half a bag of Doritos and all the snow in the world. I knew all along that it was very, very possible that we could die.
I broke down a lot. You know, I would like have these like panic attacks or whatever, you know. We're going to die or something, you know, and
Jim struggled to wear a brave face for Jennifer, but he was terribly worried, especially about the baby.
The time I think I broke down the most in the truck was when I realized that, you know, he might not make it for his first birthday.
We knew Tuesday night that something had happened. We didn't know to what extent. You know, we knew
Jim's
that
mother, preparing for her own mother's funeral, now feared for her son and his family.
It was after midnight when we really started being concerned, because we thought, well, knowing them, they will try to drive straight through.
Jim's stepfather, Kevin Mulligan.
Following that, I contacted the Idaho, Nevada, and California Highway Patrol. And at that point, they had no record of them being involved.
Eventually, an extensive search was launched.
Were they looking even in the right area?
None of us were within 150 or 200 miles. We never imagined that they would stray that far off of the initial path.
In fact, the young family had wandered into an uninhabited corner of Nevada's high desert. On the fourth day, Saturday, the skies cleared, so they decided to stop waiting for help and go look for it themselves.
we just decided that it was either just sit here and die or try to get out and try to at least try to get help and die doing it if that was the case.
Oh, how did you make your preparations?
We had gotten all the clothes and stuff, and we each had 3 layers of sweats on.
Not including the thermals.
Not including thermals and nylons and...
And what's the pantyhose thing?
We both wore pantyhose because, well, Jennifer had told me, and I heard from friends of mine who, you know, played football, and they said in the wintertime when we get cold, they wear pantyhose because it helps keep your legs warm.
The Stolpa's resourcefulness didn't stop there. Under the pantyhose, they wrapped themselves in layers of plastic from dry cleaning bags to protect their legs and feet from moisture. But they had no boots, so wearing only tennis shoes, the Stolpas set out from the truck. They left behind this note. To our potential rescuers, if we're already dead, don't mind the rest of this letter. But if we're nowhere to be found, we have started walking to 140 as it seems the closest place to find help. Sincerely, the Stolpa family. There was an added plea from Jennifer.
PPS, we are carrying with us a 5-month-old baby. Help. Oh, should have put hurry.
In another ingenious touch, they bundled their baby inside this garment bag. And Jim, a physically fit U.S. Army private, dragged it behind him like a sled as they headed into the snowy wilderness.
And what is it you're looking for? You're looking for a highway?
We were looking for Highway 140. The sign that we had passed before we got stuck said 20 miles, so we figured, you know, we walked 20 miles.
We tried to retrace the route the Stolpas took as they walked all day Saturday, and then through the bitterly cold, moonlit night, sometimes in snowdrifts waist high.
I'd look back and she'd be lagging back a little bit. So I'd have to, you know, say, come on, we can make it, you know, and we'd convince each other that we're not doing this for each other. You know, we're doing it for that little boy.
By noon Sunday, the Stolpas had walked for 29 hours, never sleeping. It was their 5th day in the wilderness. The temperature had dropped to near zero. Hope was fading.
He finally said, this 140, this Highway 140 ain't out here anywhere.
And at the point where we had stopped, we could see for miles into the valley. And that road just was not there. And that was when, you know, all of our hopes sank, and it was just like, oh, this can't be happening to us.
What did you see out there? Not Highway 140. Did you see anything?
Just more mountains
And the road that we were on that trailed farther and farther. And
Any
and
houses? No buildings?
Nothing.
Sunday night, they slept under the sky, waking up Monday morning covered with snow. It was the 6th day. They made a critical decision.
We woke up, and I had just said, I can't walk anymore. So
Because you were tired?
Yeah,
or in pain, or what?
I was exhausted, and my hips were really hurting me, and my feet were frozen, and I just decided I just couldn't make it anymore.
Jim and Jennifer found this small cave in a place called Hell Creek. 2 feet high, barely 6 feet long, with sloping walls. The cave had just enough room to shelter Jennifer and the baby.
Jim was shoving me in at first, and then once I got in there and he handed me the baby, it was almost like then that Jim said, okay, you guys stay here, I'm going to keep going.
This is probably the most important part of the story, you know, where you split up. You know, one staying behind and another going off, but first you have to say goodbye to each other. And how did that go?
I think that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Because I didn't know, you know, if I was ever going to see him again. You know, if they were going to find me, you know, fine, I'd be safe, I'd be alive, but, you know, I didn't know about them. So, you know, that goodbye was pretty hard.
What were your thoughts at that time, Jennifer?
Well, I was just hoping and praying that he would make it. You know, it was extremely hard saying bye and truly not knowing if we were going to see each other again or if we were going to make it. I think we said I love you like 1,000 times.
I was still confident, though, and I promised her. I made a promise to her. I promised her that I'd get help and that it wouldn't be more than 3 days.
And so, without food, Jim set off alone, retracing his steps more than 20 miles back to the truck. He slept there Monday night. On Tuesday morning, the 7th day in the wilderness, he set out again. Finally, a hint of civilization, a road sign. He couldn't believe his eyes. Cedarville, 51 miles away. Jennifer was on her own as well, trying to care for their baby.
I was in the cave when he would, like, cry with that really weak cry. And then when I would, like, melt the snow for him and feed it to him, he was like a baby bird. You know, he'd just lay there and just go, and it was so awful. I hope I never have to see him like that again.
Jennifer had another problem. Inside her sleeping bag, her frozen feet began to thaw.
The pain was just so bad that I just thought, well, I'll just numb him back up again and, you know, I'll just stick him back in the snow. And I didn't do it for very long. It didn't take very long for him to get cold again.
By Wednesday, 8 days into the ordeal, Jim's feet also were frozen solid. He'd been walking for 28 hours straight when suddenly, almost miraculously, something caught his eye.
So I'm walking, and I'm walking faster and faster, and, you know, finally I see that truck up there, and I, you know, start jumping up and down and just going crazy. And at first I didn't know it was a truck. I just saw some vehicle. It was a white vehicle.
Road supervisor Dave Peterson was on the job that day.
I got right about here is where I first saw him. And so I was probably 100 yards from him when I realized it was a person. I did think he was a cow. And I pulled up to him, and before I could get out of the truck, he was in the truck.
Here I tell him this big old story about, you know, my wife and my kids in a cave. They've been in there for like 3 days, and we've been stuck out here for 8 days. And he's like going, okay, let me just take you to my house, and we'll straighten this all out, you know.
I, not knowing that he was missing, I thought he was delirious, because nobody could survive these time limits that he's giving me.
Dave drove to his house where his wife, Ruth Ann, warmed Jim's frozen feet with her hairdryer.
He kept saying that he wouldn't care if they cut off both his feet, just as long as they found his wife and baby okay, you know. I think he was very worried that they weren't going to be alive. He was really concerned about that. And I just told him David would not come back without him, no matter what.
Peterson and his road crew, Dusty Ferguson and Gary Romachet, jumped into their vehicles and headed to Hell Creek to look for Jennifer and Clayton. Jim's tracks in the snow were their guide.
We had good tracks probably for 15 miles, and then it started snowing lightly, and his tracks started filling up with snow. And as hard as it was snowing and the way all the tracks were being covered up, we knew we better get there now because there might not be tomorrow.
The drive couldn't have been slower or more difficult through snowdrifts several feet deep. It would take the rescue team 4 hours to drive the 50 miles to the cave. Inside the cave, as evening approached, Jennifer thought she heard the sound she'd been praying for echo down the canyon.
I was sleeping, kind of, and I woke up because I thought I had heard engines, and they were pretty loud. And I listened, and I kept hearing them, so I was like, well, maybe I'm not dreaming. And I stuck my head out of the cave, and I saw the lights on the tractor.
As Jim had promised, help arrived 3 days after he'd left.
It was almost dark. I just started waving and yelling and screaming and crying like this, and the guy waved at me and to let me know that he saw me, and I had never been so happy.
Jennifer was in too much pain to stand up, so the rescuers scrambled up the steep hill to get to her and the baby.
And she was sitting right here when I got up with her baby cradled in her arms. And she was crying, and she says, "Thank God you found us." And her second words were, "How is Jim? Did he make it?" I said, "Jim made it, or else we wouldn't be here."
Dave Peterson's instincts were right on target. There would have been no tomorrow for Jennifer and Clayton. Just hours after their rescue, 18 inches of fresh snow fell, covering over Jim's tracks to the cave. There is much more to their story. When we come back, from lost in the wilderness to totally besieged by the media, well-wishers and Hollywood producers, Jim and Jennifer on the road back after this. Who got lost in a blizzard and survived 8 days in the wilderness. For Jennifer, the ride back to civilization, though rough and slow, was pure joy. For Jim, the wait had been pure agony until finally word came his wife and son were safe. But the story doesn't end there. Jim and Jennifer were totally unprepared for what happened next, the good and the bad. Within hours after their dramatic rescue on January 6th, Jennifer and Clayton were rushed by ambulance to this small community hospital in Cedarville, California, the very town Jim had struggled so hard to reach during his trek through the snow. By the time they arrived, he was already being treated there.
Tell me about the reunion. Well, there really wasn't much to the reunion, because by the time I got there, Jim was all, he was all drugged up, and he was half asleep.
Yeah.
Little Clayton was only mildly dehydrated and had a case of diaper rash, but otherwise was in remarkably good shape.
His toes were fine, and his fingers were fine, everything was fine.
But unlike Clayton, Jim and Jennifer had a severe case of frostbite on their feet, and the decision was quickly made to transfer them to a bigger, better-equipped hospital in Reno.
This is really the worst that I've seen. Usually people who have frostbite of this nature are, she's not here to talk about it very often.
Plastic surgeon Louis Benaldi treated Jim and Jennifer's frostbite at Reno's Washoe Medical Center.
I don't know how Jim could have walked another step, basically, because I tell you, they were really in terrible shape, and he must have been suffering severe pain with every step that he took.
After 12 days in the hospital and 3 weeks after their ordeal began, it was clear to Dr. Benaldi that the thing everyone feared was unavoidable: amputation. First Jennifer, then 5 days later, Jim. Their injuries were almost identical, on opposite feet. They both lost 1/4 of one foot, 1/3 of the other.
Your lives are never going to be the same. That's a fair statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Changed in how many ways?
Well, the obvious. You know, we have to learn to walk again, and it's going to take a long time for that.
They're young, they have time, but other changes in their lives wouldn't wait. They had triumphed over the wilderness, survived cold, hunger, and fear, but they were about to encounter something else, something almost as overwhelming: fame.
Are you ready? Top 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
They got the first little taste of it when they were surrounded by 30 reporters and cameramen as they were leaving the small hospital in Cedarville. Jennifer rose to the occasion.
Ollie's here. On 3.
Great ad lib, you know, for someone who's been in the cave and in the snow for a week.
I just always wanted to say that, and the cameras were right there, so just kind of flew out of my mouth.
I've got the baby. Get him on the horn.
By the time the Stolpas reached Reno, there were more than 100 reporters, photographers, and TV crews waiting from all over the world. And as word of their incredible story spread, the hospital was swamped with thousands of phone calls and letters from well-wishers. I've been looking at some of the envelopes, and the addresses are particularly interesting. This is addressed to the husband that built a snow cave for wife and baby and walked until found, and were rescued after a week in the snow. There's another one. To the 2 people and their baby who went through such a terrible ordeal. This is from
Don't make me laugh.
from New Zealand? All the way from New Zealand you've had mail?
You know, it's really nice. I love, you know, we read every letter we get, we read them.
There were dozens of presents for Clayton, and every day during their hospital stay, as the Stolpas recuperated, the packages kept pouring in.
Some man sent us very thick and very long waterproof socks.
Wool.
They're like knee-high, inch-thick waterproof socks. And next time I go anywhere in the snow, I'll be taking them socks. I'll tell you that.
The mail also brought lots of letters from Hollywood. Movie producers, scores of them, simultaneously struck with inspiration. What a great movie Jim and Jennifer's story would make. Jim's stepfather, Kevin Mulligan, says his phone didn't stop ringing.
I received over 500 phone calls from news media and Hollywood producer types in the first 2.5 days. The hotel that I'm staying at was bringing them up in packets of 25 because they couldn't get through on the phone lines.
They're all coming to us, you know, and that's kind of how we wanted it. Cause
Mulligan had the savvy to contact a friend, an agent, Michael Glantz. He figured, why not let Jim and Jennifer decide who would make the movie?
Can we talk about this? Remember?
And then began a scene improbable even for Hollywood, as the Stolpas' agent escorted movie producers to their hospital room to make their pitches. Howard Bronstein and Michael Jaffe have a long list of made-for-TV movie credits between them. They were among 5 finalists who flew to Reno to meet Jim and Jennifer.
Oh, you give a good squeeze. Here we go.
Why do you want to do our story?
Jane asked the same question, give you the same answer. It's a great story about commitment you make when you get married and all that, and love.
So is that what you see our story as, like a love story? I mean,
No,
is that...
I say in the broadest sense, I see it as a story about commitment, about what it means to say, to go to the altar and say, you know, till death do us part. And for me, that would be what I would call a controlling metaphor.
That's great. I like that one.
Sure enough, they got the job. Now Jim and Jennifer are toying with casting ideas. Well, who do you think should play Jim?
Oh, God, I don't know. He kind of looks like, I think, Christian Slater.
What about your wife? Who would play Jennifer?
You know, we talked about this in the truck, too. Before we started walking, we were like, you know, if we ever get out of this would make a pretty good movie, I think. But, and she's like, and finally, you know, when we were saved and stuff, she said that she wanted Demi Moore to play her because she's a pretty, you know, she's a pretty crier. That's what she said.
She cries pretty, and I cry a lot. So.
I don't know. I don't know who should play her. I don't know. There's nobody that compares to my wife, you know, to me.
Oh, my God.
The rights to the Jim and Jennifer Stolpa story may have set a record, possibly $500,000, but that will not make them rich.
I'm sure a lot of that will go to hospital bills.
What else? Probably Clayton's college fund.
Yeah. Stamps for thank you notes. That would be a big part of it.
Yeah.
And yourselves?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about that much, you know, that too much. About what?
We might have to buy new shoes.
Yeah.
Yes, Jim and Jennifer can joke about their condition, which either means they're coping miraculously well, or they haven't yet faced their loss. Jim's mother, Muriel.
I think it hasn't really set in yet, and I think they'll feel some kind of emotions down the road a little bit. I wish they'd feel them sooner.
Over what?
Over the traumatic experience that they were through, facing death. I think they're going to feel that later. I'm sorry.
Kim, are you bracing for the same thing?
Yes. They have a long road ahead of them, and they have to start all over again. They have to learn to walk. And
Worried moms, yet proud, and just a little bit surprised that their kids had what it takes to survive.
Jimmy was a boy who couldn't walk half a mile to the bus stop and had to borrow the car. And to think that he walked days, miles, with frozen feet.
Do you see a different man?
I see a man now. I truly. In fact, my husband said, and you've lost your little boy. He is now a man, and he truly is.
Crazy house to get it.
Jim and Jennifer are anxious to start their new lives. Their 8-day ordeal in the wilderness now behind them. First, the slow healing process. Then learning to walk again. A project Mom and Dad and baby Clayton may be tackling together.
I get the idea that you've gained an awful lot more than you've lost from this experience. Would I be right about that?
Yeah, I think so. It's a shame to say it took something this bad to make us realize that, but we realize it now, that there are so many things that we have taken for granted that we won't anymore.
All of the emotions, Jane, may not have set in for them, but what irrepressible senses of humor about all of this.
Yes, their mothers are right. They do have some adjustments ahead of them, but you've seen what kind of people they are, and I have a lot of confidence. I'm told that they have their up days and down days, but at home we're surprised at how well they're getting around on their own in many ways. Went out to dinner with friends the other night, so life is getting back to normal.
How are they doing with the progress at their feet?
It'll be months before the healing is sufficient so they can start learning how to walk again. But, you know, like I say, they've got time. They're young. People ask, how could it happen? You know, it happened again about several days after they left the hospital. another couple found themselves stranded in another part of Nevada in the snow. He walked eventually for help, but by the time help arrived for her, it was too late. She was found frozen to death. This young couple, the Stolpas, really are awfully lucky to have made it out alive.
Well, I hope little Clayton, when he gets a little older, sees your story so he understands just what strong parents he has.
That's for sure.
Thanks, Jane.